Hello, my dear friends. If you enjoy this story, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your support, and now let's begin.
Part 1. Some marriages die not from betrayal, but from routine, where even desire is placed somewhere between laundry and paying bills. My marriage was dying exactly like that, quietly, decently, almost piously. My name is Maribel West. I am 30 years old, and I teach literature at a school attached to St. Bridget's Monastery in Connecticut. My husband Calder works as a banker in Hartford, wears expensive shirts, and knows how to count other people's money better than his own feelings. We have 2 children. Nolan is 9, Elodie is 8, and they can destroy any order faster than a financial crisis. From the outside, we looked like the perfect family for a church brochure. Husband, wife, children, prayer before meals, apple pie on Sundays, and no scandals behind white shutters. Everyone said I was lucky, especially Sister Agnes, the principal of our school, a woman with the voice of a church bell and the gaze of a tax inspector. "Maribel, you are a wonderful example of a young wife," she told me almost every Friday. I smiled, adjusted the stack of notebooks, and answered that I was simply trying my best. In truth, sometimes I wanted to tell her that an exemplary wife can also get tired of being a display window. But in a church school, it is better to keep such phrases behind your teeth. There, even lipstick that was too bright could cause a short prayer and a faculty meeting. I loved my work because the children were alive, noisy, and funny. They wrote essays about faith, friendship, and pet hamsters so dramatically, as if every hamster carried the cross of world history. One boy once wrote that his guinea pig had taught him humility because it only bit proud people. I gave him the highest grade because the theology was questionable, but the style was magnificent. With children, life felt real. But at home, everything became too proper. Calder was a good husband, and that was exactly what made my sadness almost indecent. He did not drink, did not disappear at night, did not speak harshly to me, did not forget birthdays, and always checked the tire pressure. He was a reliable, calm, well-mannered man whom any mother would call a gift from fate. Reliability is a wonderful thing until one day you realize you are not living with a man, but with a high-quality safe deposit box. Our evenings became identical. The children did homework at the kitchen table, Calder reviewed reports on his tablet, and I checked notebooks. Sometimes I found more life in children's mistakes than in our bedroom. After dinner, we washed dishes, put the children to bed, and watched a series neither of us really liked. Sometimes Calder took my hand on the couch. It was tender, it was right, and it awakened almost nothing in me. For a long time I thought the problem was me. Maybe I was too tired from work, children, church meetings, and the need to be good. Maybe after 10 years of marriage, romance is supposed to turn into a schedule. That is what intelligent people say at family seminars, where they serve cookies on plastic plates and smile with too much confidence. Love becomes calmer, Sister Agnes told parents after Sunday service. I stood beside the paper cups of coffee and thought that calm can mean different things. There is the calm of a lake at dawn, clean, deep, and alive. And there is the calm of a room from which the furniture was removed long ago, but for some reason the light was left on. I did not want another husband. That was the whole difficulty. I wanted to want my own husband again. I wanted to look at Calder and feel not only gratitude for stability, but also risk, warmth, and an almost forgotten thrill. I wanted him to see me not as the mother of his children and the woman who knows where the spare batteries are kept. I wanted him to see me again as a woman who could be lost if she was ignored for too long. The scariest thing did not begin in the bedroom. The scariest thing began on my laptop. One evening, Calder was helping Nolan build a volcano model for a school project. Elodie sat nearby, decorating the paper slope with glitter because, as she said, lava also has the right to be beautiful. I sat in the kitchen, looking for ideas for a romantic weekend. At first, everything was proper. Hotels in Vermont, dinner in New Haven, a spa in Massachusetts, a walk along the old Yale campus. Then the internet, that sly snake in the cable, offered me an article about closed evenings for adult couples. I should have closed the page immediately. I was a teacher at a monastery school, a mother of 2 children, and a woman who explained to teenagers every morning that Jane Austen did not only write about dresses. But I did not close it. I read first with horror, then with curiosity, then with such heat in my face that I had to open the window. There was a cold November wind outside, but it felt as if the kitchen had suddenly become too small. The article described closed evenings in masks. Couples came together, discussed boundaries in advance, and had the right to say no at any second. Not dirty, not cheap, not the way people frighten you from the pulpit or show it in bad movies. Rather strange, dangerous, and somehow honest. Mom, will the volcano erupt with ketchup or vinegar? Nolan shouted from the living room. I slammed the laptop shut so sharply, as if my child had caught me robbing a bank. Vinegar, sweetheart, I answered too loudly. Calder looked into the kitchen. There was a red marker line on his cheek, and he looked like a banker who had lost a fight with a stationery set. Are you okay? He asked, looking at the closed laptop. Yes, just school emails, I said too evenly. He narrowed his eyes. School emails usually don't make you look like you saw the devil in the online gradebook. I laughed because he could still hit the mark. Believe me, Calder, sometimes 5th-grade parents are scarier than the devil. He smiled and returned to the volcano, and I remained sitting at the table with a closed laptop and an open abyss inside me. For the next few weeks, I lived with that secret like a hot stone in my pocket. I made breakfasts, checked dictations, took Elodie to piano lessons, and nodded to Sister Agnes in the school corridors. And inside me, a question was growing that I was afraid to say even in an empty room. What if I am not corrupted, but simply alive? Sometimes I watched Calder in the morning as he fastened his cufflinks in front of the mirror. He was a handsome man, just hidden beneath layers of responsibility, mortgage spreadsheets, and church politeness. He had strong hands, tired eyes, and a habit of sighing before work calls. I wanted to walk up to him and say that I was afraid of becoming his good neighbor with shared children. But instead, I asked whether he had remembered to pick Elodie up from choir. In December, the school began preparing for the Christmas concert. The children sang so loudly that the old stained-glass windows in the chapel trembled with enthusiasm. Sister Agnes walked between the rows and adjusted the boys' collars with the expression of a general before a parade. Maribel, you and Calder have such a wonderful family, she said after rehearsal. I held the folder of sheet music and watched my daughter wave at me from the front row. Thank you, Sister Agnes, I answered in my safest voice. So few young women today understand the value of modesty, she continued. I smiled as gently as I could. Something clicked inside me. It did not break. It clicked, because I suddenly realized that my whole adult life, I had confused modesty with disappearance. That evening, I came home later than usual. Calder was in the kitchen trying to cook dinner. There were chicken breasts in the pan that looked as if someone had already read them their last rites. I almost managed, he said proudly. Calder, this chicken has suffered more than all of Victorian literature. He looked at the pan and nodded seriously. Then I will call the dish Jane Eyre in smoky sauce. I laughed for the first time all day, and at that moment it hurt especially badly, because he was mine. Funny, dry, tired, good. I did not want to leave him. I wanted to return to him. I just did not know how to open the door, if we had both spent so many years pretending it was not locked. The opportunity came in January. Calder's parents called and offered to take the children for the weekend to a small cabin in the Berkshire Mountains. Nolan screamed with joy as if he had been accepted into a secret society of snow lovers. Elodie immediately began packing 3 dresses, a stuffed rabbit, and a book she had no intention of reading. Calder said we would finally get some sleep. I said it was a wonderful idea, and inside, I felt a quiet panic rising, because an empty house left me no excuses. The children left on Friday afternoon. My mother-in-law kissed me on the cheek, handed me a container of banana bread, and said that Calder and I should spend time like young people. I almost choked on air. Calder closed the door behind them, turned to me, and smiled. Well, Mrs. West, we have 48 hours of freedom. I looked at him, at the house, which had become too quiet for the first time in years, at the banana bread in my hands, at my life, which was standing on the threshold of something dangerous and necessary. Calder, I said, trying not to let my voice tremble. He stopped smiling at once. Maribel, what happened? I put the container on the table. For some reason, my fingers smelled of cinnamon and fear. I need to talk to you about us. He slowly took off his glasses and placed them beside the keys. Bankers have a special talent for preparing for bad news even at home. All right, he said calmly. I breathed in so deeply, as if I were about to dive under ice. I do not want to cheat on you, Calder. He blinked once, very slowly. That is probably the most alarming way to start a family conversation. I laughed nervously, but the laugh came out dry. I know, it sounds terrible. Continue, because my brain has already opened a crisis committee. I looked straight into his eyes, and for the first time, I said the truth I had hidden for too long. I do not want to cheat on you, Calder. I want you again, as if we are still alive.
Part 2.
Calder was silent for so long that I heard the refrigerator click in the corner of the kitchen. Then somewhere upstairs, the old house creaked with a beam, as if it had also decided not to interfere. He stood across from me in a shirt with rolled-up sleeves and the face of a man who had been shown a report without a final line. Maribel, he said carefully, are you talking about divorce? No, I answered too quickly. About someone else? No, Calder, if there were someone else, I would not begin the conversation with your mother's banana bread. He blinked, then gave a nervous half-smile. Fair enough. Mom really does not deserve to be part of a love triangle. I smiled too, but everything inside me was shaking. Humor was our old bridge. We often crossed it over holes we were afraid to look into directly. Then explain it to me, he said more quietly. Because I hear the words, but I don't understand where we are standing. I ran my palm along the edge of the table. The kitchen lamp reflected in the dark window, and in that reflection we looked like a strange couple from a neighbor's house. We are standing in a marriage that looks good from the outside, I said. But inside, it has become too quiet. Calder lowered his gaze. I thought quiet meant we were coping. I thought so too, I answered. And then I realized that sometimes quiet means people have stopped calling to each other. He slowly sat down on a chair. He did not collapse. He did not flare up. He did not begin accusing me. He simply sat down like a person who needed a solid surface under his feet. Are you unhappy with me? He asked. That question hurt more than I expected. If I said yes, it would be a lie. If I said no, it would also be a lie. I am not unhappy with you, I said. I am unhappy in the version of us we have become. He nodded, but the nod was empty. He was still trying to catch up with the meaning. I thought we were just tired, he said. Children, work, the house, church, your school, my clients. We are tired, I agreed. But we turn exhaustion into a lifestyle. Calder rubbed his face with his hands. For a second, I saw not the banker from Hartford, but a boy who did not know the correct answer for the first time. And what do you want? He asked. That was when I truly became afraid. Until that moment, I could speak about sadness, routine, and a marriage that had become too neat. But beyond that was a door, behind which stood masks, closed evenings, and my own unknown side. I want to try something new, I said. Calder raised his eyes. New like dancing? Not exactly. Cooking classes? Calder, after your chicken. That sounds like a threat. I am trying to cling to safe categories. I can see that, I said. And I love you for it, but safe categories are not going to help us right now. He was silent. I could feel my blood pounding in my temples. I read about closed evenings for couples. I finally said, with masks, rules, and the possibility to just watch and leave. Calder froze. Not dramatically. He simply stopped moving, as if someone had paused him. You read about what? He asked. Closed evenings for adult couples. So, not a book club. There are probably people there who read instructions. He did not smile. The joke fell to the floor and died alone. Maribel, he said slowly, Are you suggesting we go there? I am suggesting that we at least talk about it. That is not exactly the same thing. That is why I am talking for now and not standing in front of you in a feathered mask. He looked at me as if he imagined that picture and immediately regretted it. God, he breathed out. I know, I said. Believe me, I have been saying that word to myself in different tones for weeks. He stood, walked to the window, and stopped with his back to me. Beyond the glass, the January evening lay over our quiet neighborhood, covering the houses in blue darkness. Lights burned in the neighbors' windows. Someone was living an ordinary Friday, cooking dinner, scolding children about toys, and not discussing closed parties with his wife. Do you understand who you are? Calder said without turning around. I felt something tighten inside me. A teacher at a monastery school, a mother of two, and a woman who regrets not starting with cooking classes. He turned. There was no contempt in his face. There was confusion, fear, and something almost like hurt. I am not talking about your work, he said. I am talking about who you are to me. You are my wife. Exactly, I answered, and my voice trembled for the first time. I am your wife, Calder. Not a family function. He watched me silently. I am not part of a Sunday photograph, I said. Not the person who checks school planners and buys cookies for the children. He looked away first. It was a small movement, almost invisible, but I knew him too well. He admitted the hit. I never wanted you to feel invisible, he said. I know. I really never wanted that. I know, Calder. He sat down again, closer to me now. Between us stood the container of banana bread, like an absurd witness to a marriage crisis. Do you want other men? He asked after a pause. I had expected that question, but it still struck me, because there was no accusation in it, only fear. I want to feel again that choice's weight, I said. I want to know that we are together not just because we got used to it. That sounds beautiful, but it does not answer the question. Yes, I admitted. Maybe part of me wants to feel another person's gaze. Calder breathed in quietly. The glass beside his hand trembled when he touched it with his finger. But not because I don't need you, I added. Because I am afraid I have disappeared into being proper. He watched me for a long time. Then he said something completely different from what I feared. I disappeared too. I raised my eyes. What? He gave a joyless half-smile. You think I don't feel this? That I have become a walking payment schedule in a tie? Calder. No, let me say it, he interrupted gently. I wake up, calculate risks, smile at clients, come home, and try to be a good father. He ran a hand through his hair. And at night, I lie beside you, and sometimes I am afraid to touch you first, because I don't want to become one more task on your list. I did not know what to answer. There had been so many prepared accusations in my head that his confession knocked the whole neat speech out of me. I thought you simply did not want me anymore, I said. And I thought you were simply enduring it. We looked at each other across the table, and for the first time in years, I felt real, sharp fear. We had both lived beside the same pain. Each of us simply thought we were suffering alone. Calder opened the container, broke off a piece of banana bread, and placed it on a napkin. I need to do something with my hands, otherwise I will start speaking like a financial report. Too late, I said. You already sound like a man who wants to diversify the emotional portfolio. He looked at me and unexpectedly laughed. Not loudly, but genuinely. That laugh broke the first icy crust between us. All right, he said once he calmed down. My banker brain wants to ask an indecent number of questions. I expected at least a spreadsheet. Do not provoke me, Maribel. I have Excel and religious trauma around uncertainty. All right, I said. Ask. He straightened, and I saw the familiar Calder preparing for a complicated deal. Only now the deal was us. First, he said, do you want to do this because you love me, or because you are already leaving me in your mind? Because I love you, I answered without a pause. If I were leaving, it would be easier for me to stay silent. He nodded. Second, do you understand this could hurt us? Yes. Seriously hurt us? Yes, Calder. Third, are you ready to stop if one of us gets scared? Yes, I said, even if it is me 5 minutes after we walk in. He watched me closely, almost sternly. Fourth, no secrets. No secrets. Even small ones? Especially small ones, I answered. Big secrets rarely begin big. He lowered his eyes. It seemed to me that the phrase both pleased and frightened him. Now my question, I said. I am afraid, but go ahead. Do you think I am dirty for saying this? His face changed instantly. Maribel. Answer. He leaned forward. No, he said firmly. I am scared. I am jealous of people I have not even seen yet, and I slightly want to call a priest. I laughed hoarsely. And a financial consultant, he added. Just in case. But dirty, he continued. No. I feel like a fool who lived beside a woman for 10 years and decided he knew every room in her house. My throat tightened. Calder reached across the table. I placed my hand in his. His fingers were warm and slightly damp from tension. I don't know whether I can do it, he said. But I want to understand why you reached the point where you were afraid to tell me the truth. Because I was afraid of losing you. And decided to suggest a closed party, he asked dryly. I know, the strategy is debatable. Debatable is when I buy stocks on rumors. This is already an emotional jump off a bridge. With a parachute, I said. The rules will be the parachute. He shook his head, but the corner of his mouth twitched. You have already thought about rules? Every day for the past 3 weeks. Of course you have, he said. You are a teacher. You people turn even chaos into a lesson plan. And you are a banker. You turn even desire into risk assessment. That is exactly why we are not in prison and not bankrupt. We sat in the kitchen almost until midnight. Half the banana bread disappeared, though neither of us remembered eating it. We talked about fear, faith, marriage, and the fact that honesty sometimes looks scarier than sin. Calder said that phrase. I even asked him to repeat it because I did not believe my ears. He became embarrassed and began tugging at the napkin. I am not saying I have a theological defense ready for our insane idea, he said. I am saying honesty is definitely better than lying. Even this kind of honesty? Especially this kind, he answered. Because decent people know how to lie very beautifully. I looked at him and thought that for the first time in a long while, I wanted to know who he was now. Not the father of my children. Not the banker. Not the man from the Sunday photograph. But the person sitting across from me at night in the kitchen, trying not to run from my truth. Closer to midnight, he stood and poured us tea. The tea came out too strong, almost aggressive. Are you taking revenge for the conversation? I asked, looking into the cup. No. My hand just slipped with the tea bags. Calder, it tastes like confession after a tax audit. For the first time that evening, he smiled softly. Maribel, I want to try not the party. I froze. What? First, I want to try talking to you without armor, he said. If in the morning we are not afraid of ourselves, then we will make rules. I nodded. A strange relief rose inside me. Some part of me was also afraid that we would run too quickly into a place where we first needed to learn how to hold each other's hand. All right, I said. Then tonight, no masks. Tonight, no masks, he repeated. He came over to me and embraced me. Not as usual. Not briefly, not in passing, not with the familiar movement of a person who knows the route. He held me carefully, as if asking permission for my body and soul at the same time. I pressed myself against him and suddenly began to cry. Not loudly. Without a beautiful cinematic scene. I simply stood in the kitchen, smelling of cinnamon, strong tea, and fear, and cried into his shirt. Calder was silent. He only held me. Sometimes that is all a woman needs from a man in the moment when she finally stops being convenient. I am here, he said into my hair. For now, I answered through tears. He pulled back a little and looked at me. No, Maribel. I am not here for now. I am here if we both stop pretending that routine can replace life. In the morning, we woke up late. The house was quiet. No one argued over cereal, looked for socks, or shouted that Elodie had occupied the bathroom forever. Calder lay beside me and stared at the ceiling. "Are we still crazy?" he asked. "Probably," I answered, "but with a good credit history." He laughed, a sleepy, low laugh. Then he turned to me. "If we do this, we do it slowly." "Yes." "With rules." "Yes." "And if I see Sister Agnes there in a mask, I am immediately joining the Trappists." I covered my face with my hands. "Thank you. Now I will think about that all day." "You open this door yourself, dear." I opened the door to honesty, not a monastery thriller. After breakfast, we sat at the kitchen table. Calder brought a notebook. I brought a pen. At the top of the page, he wrote, "Rules for Sinners." I looked at the title and raised an eyebrow. "Seriously?" "Working title," he said. "We can discuss it later with the compliance department. I am married to an impossible man, but a reliable one." "Calder, yesterday we discussed a closed party in masks. Reliability can be flexible." I took the pen from him and wrote the first rule. "No secrets." He read it and nodded. Then he added the second. "The right to stop at any second." I wrote the third. "No actions out of fear, anger, or the desire to prove courage." He added the fourth. "After every step, we tell the truth, even if it sounds ugly." We continued writing. "No alcohol for courage. No pressure. No hidden messages. No separate decisions. Home together. Morning together. Breakfast and honest discussion, even if it is awkward." When the list was finished, Calder leaned back in his chair. "This is the strangest document I have ever signed without a lawyer. Will you sign it?" He took the pen and placed his signature at the bottom of the page. "Too neat. Banker-like." I placed mine beside it. Whiter, nervous, but real. We sat over that sheet like two conspirators in a house with white shutters and children's drawings on the refrigerator. And for the first time in years, I felt not shame, but movement. Part 3. The 2 weeks before the evening in New Haven felt stranger than the entire previous year of our marriage. From the outside, everything looked ordinary. I taught literature, Calder went to the bank, the children argued over cereal, and our neighbor Mr. Halloran trimmed his bushes again, as if he were at war with nature. But inside the house there was current, not loud and not constant, but alive. Calder and I began noticing each other in small things that used to pass us by, like cars on a wet road. He lingered in the bedroom doorway when he saw me brushing my hair in front of the mirror. I watched him roll up the sleeves of his shirt before dinner, and suddenly remembered that once those hands could make me lose my breath. One morning, Calder was pouring coffee and suddenly said, "You look beautiful today." I froze with a plate in my hands. "Calder, I am in an old cardigan and with the face of a woman who checked essays until midnight." "I didn't say dressed up," he answered. "I said beautiful." Nolan raised his head from his cereal. "Dad, are you trying to avoid taking out the trash?" Calder looked at his son with offended dignity. "Young man, romance and household duties can coexist." Elodie snorted into her tea. "Then romantically take out the trash." I laughed so loudly, I almost dropped the plate. And in that laughter, there was something almost forgotten. Not just family exhaustion, but the feeling that Calder and I were standing on the same side of the table again. At school, everything was harder. The closer Saturday came, the more strongly I felt the absurdity of my double life. In the morning, I explained the symbolism of light in Christmas poetry to children. During the day, I checked essays about virtue and humility. And in the evening, I opened my closet and wondered which dress would not scream, "I am a mother of 2 and accidentally wandered into someone else's fantasy." Sister Agnes, of course, knew nothing. But it seemed to me that she saw everything. On Wednesday, she stopped me in the corridor after lessons. "Maribel, you seem a little distracted this week." I pressed the folder to my chest. "Just tired, Sister Agnes." She looked at me over her glasses. "Fatigue often comes when the soul is carrying something extra." I almost laughed right there in the corridor, Because my soul was carrying a closed evening in New Haven, a banker husband in a state of moral anxiety, and a list of rules called Rules for Sinners. I will think about that, I said in my most pious voice. Prayer helps restore clarity, she said. Sometimes an honest conversation does too, I answered before I could stop myself. Sister Agnes raised her eyebrows in surprise. Then she nodded. That is a rare thought, Maribel. And a very correct one. I left the school into the frosty air and thought that perhaps the world was more complicated than we were allowed to admit. On Thursday evening, Calder and I opened my closet. He stood beside the bed with the look of a man appointed as auditor of a woman's anxiety. 3 dresses lay on the bed. Black, dark green, and wine-colored. I vote for the green one, Calder said.
Why?
It looks as if you could quote Emily Dickinson and destroy a man's self-esteem with one eyebrow. That is a very specific recommendation. I am a banker. We call this analytics. I held the green dress against myself and looked in the mirror. It was simple, covered enough for me not to feel like a stranger, and soft enough at the waist to remind me that I was not only a teacher with a folder. And the mask? I asked. Calder picked up the small black mask from the dresser, the one I had ordered online and hidden in a box from under children's cards. He held it with 2 fingers. Strange that this thing frightens me more than a mortgage crisis. A mortgage crisis does not sit with you at breakfast. Exactly. That makes it easier. I took the mask from him. We can still not go. He looked at me through the mirror. Do you want not to go? I stayed silent too long. That answer was enough. Then we go, he said, but slowly.
No heroics.
On Friday evening, the children left with his parents. Nolan took 3 pairs of gloves, 1 walkie-talkie, and a suspicious amount of cookies. Elodie hugged me so tightly, as if she were not going to her grandmother's house with a fireplace, but on an expedition to the North Pole. When my mother-in-law's car disappeared around the corner, Calder and I remained on the porch. The cold air smelled of snow and smoke from a neighbor's chimney. The house is too quiet again, he said. This is the second time you have noticed that, because in the quiet, I can hear both of us thinking about Saturday. I turned to him. What are you thinking about? He hid his hands in the pockets of his coat. That I am jealous of people I have not seen yet, and at the same time, I want to see you walk in there in the green dress. I felt my face grow hot. That is a very honest and uncomfortable answer. We agreed, he said. On Saturday, the day dragged unbearably slowly. We tried to do ordinary things. Calder paid bills. I washed the children's pajamas. We went to the store and bought milk, eggs, and toothpaste, as if we were not going to cross the border of our ordinary life that evening. At the checkout, an elderly woman in front of us argued with a payment terminal for a long time. Calder leaned toward me and whispered, "Here it is, the true erotica of middle age. A person defeating the banking system." "Don't start," I said, though I was smiling. "I am simply trying to lower the tension." "You call that lowering it?" "Yes, I am a professional in risk management." "Calder, tonight the risk will be wearing a mask." He looked at me and suddenly became serious. "The main thing is that we are without masks with each other." Sometimes he said things so simply that I wanted to hug him right there between the milk and the toothpaste. In the evening, I dressed slowly. The green dress, thin earrings, a small fragrance with bitter orange notes, the mask in a small purse. I looked in the mirror and did not recognize myself at once. Not because I had become someone else, but because for the first time in a long time, I saw more in myself than the familiar version. Calder knocked on the bedroom door, even though it was open. "May I?" "You have lived here for 10 years. Tonight, I feel like I should ask." He entered and stopped. He wore a dark suit without a tie. His shirt was unbuttoned 1 button more than usual, and it looked almost like a rebellion against the banking system. "Well?" I asked, feeling too vulnerable. He slowly exhaled. "I am trying to say something worthy, but my brain is displaying a high-risk warning." "Is that a compliment?" "The best I have in my current condition." I walked up to him and adjusted his collar. You are handsome too. I feel like a man going to take an exam for which his wife secretly studied for 3 weeks. I did not study secretly, but with internal conflict. That sounds more pedagogically acceptable. We both laughed, but the laughter quickly faded. In the hallway, Calder took our sheet of rules. He folded it in 4 and placed it inside the inner pocket of his jacket. Are you seriously taking it with you? Yes. Calder, this is not a mortgage contract. No, he said. It is more important. The drive to New Haven took 40 minutes. The highway shone after light snow. The headlights of passing cars slid over the windshield, and the radio played a song far too cheerful. We barely spoke. Sometimes Calder gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. Sometimes I looked at his profile and thought I had never loved him as strangely as I did that night. Not calmly, not habitually, but sharply, anxiously, with a full understanding that he did not belong to me like an object.
He was choosing to be with me, and I was choosing to be with him.
Again, as we entered New Haven, he suddenly said, Maribel, I have a last-minute question. Yes, if someone there is one of your students' parents, what is the plan? Die on the spot, I answered. Good plan. Brief and decisive. And yours? Say that I am conducting a financial literacy inspection among morally complex communities. I covered my face with my hand. Please never improvise under pressure. Fair. The club was not in a dark basement, as I had feared, but in an old brick building next to a gallery. There were no neon signs at the entrance. Only a small brass plaque with a name that sounded like a charity evening for people with emotional problems. A couple in their 50s stood on the sidewalk. She wore a silver coat. He held her hand so gently, as if they were not going to a closed evening, but crossing ice near a church.
For some reason, that calmed me.
They look normal, I whispered. We look normal too, Calder said. That is the horror. At the entrance, a woman with short gray hair and a calm professional face greeted us. She checked our names, explained the rules, and said a phrase I remembered immediately. Any no, here is a complete sentence and does not require an explanation. I wanted to give her the highest grade. We were led into a small foyer. Warm light, dark wood, soft music, people in masks, beautiful, ordinary, funny, nervous, too confident, too shy. No one looked like a monster from a sermon. No one laughed at us. It was almost disappointingly civilized. Calder leaned toward my ear. I expected more sin and less quality parquet. Calder.
What?
Do not make me laugh. I am already holding on by sheer honesty. He took my hand. I am here. I looked at him in the black mask, at his familiar mouth, at the line of his jaw, which I knew better than the school schedule. And suddenly, he seemed like a stranger to me, not foreign. A stranger in the best sense. A man I could still study.
Part 4.
In the main hall, people spoke in small groups. Someone drank water with lime. Someone laughed by the fireplace. Someone danced slowly, without theatrical courage. Calder and I stood by the wall like parents at a first school dance, only without the chance to hide behind children.
We can leave, he said.
I know. Do you want to? I looked around, at a woman in a blue mask who listened to her husband with her hand on his shoulder, at a man by the fireplace who nervously turned a glass the same way Calder turned a pen during meetings, at the gray-haired couple in the silver coat, now laughing with another couple. No, I said. Not yet. A woman around 45 in a burgundy dress approached us. She had confident posture and warm eyes behind a golden mask. It is your first time, she said without making it a question. Calder smiled carefully. Is it that obvious? Darling, you're holding your wife's hand as if they're giving out adjustable rate mortgages here. I laughed before I had time to be afraid. The woman offered me her hand. Celeste. Maribel, I said. Calder, my husband introduced himself. And my husband Ivor is currently arguing with the bartender about whether ice can ruin mineral water, Celeste said. A tall man with silver hair and a black mask came over to us. I was not arguing, he said. I was doing educational work. Ivor, you once did educational work with a parking meter. And it surrendered, by the way.
Calder looked at me.
I saw the tension in his shoulders ease a little. Celeste noticed it too. In fact, she seemed to notice everything. The first rule of the first evening, she said. Do not try to be braver than you are. We have a list of rules, Calder said. I closed my eyes.
Of course he said it.
Celeste came alive. Really? Ivor looked at Calder with respect. Finally, a man who came prepared. Calder took the folded sheet from the inner pocket of his jacket. I whispered, I am divorcing you right here. Too late, he answered. We have a rule against sudden decisions. Celeste laughed so softly that I did not feel mocked. She read the title and raised her eyebrows. Rules for Sinners. Very sweet. Working title, Calder said. Keep it, Ivor said. A good marriage should have a little theology and a little humor. I looked at those people and for the first time thought that perhaps we were not alone in our strangeness. We simply had not known where to look for other living, frightened, honest adults. Celeste led me a little aside while the men discussed something about the club's rules. You look as if you want to run away and stay at the same time, she said. That is a very accurate description. Then do not rush. Have you been coming here long? Sometimes, she answered. But these evenings did not save us. What did? She looked at Ivor. He was saying something to Calder, and Calder was listening with the serious face he usually put on for important clients. The truth saved us, Celeste said. The evenings simply forced us to stop pretending we controlled everything. I remembered that phrase.
Because it did not sound like advice.
It sounded like a warning. A little later, the music began. Not loud.
Slow.
Ivor invited me to dance with such old-fashioned politeness that I did not immediately understand what was happening. Calder stood nearby. I looked at him, not asking permission.
Checking.
He tensed. I saw it immediately. But then he slowly nodded. Only if you want to, he said. Those 4 words became more important than the dance itself. I went out with Ivor to the center of the hall. He kept a respectful distance. His hand was light, almost weightless. Your husband is currently going through a small internal tax audit, Ivor said. He is a banker. For him, that is almost romance. Ivor smiled. And you? I am a teacher. I evaluate what is happening on a scale from the essay is undeveloped to the author-experienced catharsis. And what grade is it now? I looked over Ivor's shoulder. Calder stood at the edge of the hall beside Celeste. She was saying something to him, and he was listening. Then suddenly he smiled. Not politely. For real. And that was when jealousy pricked me for the first time. Not beautiful. Not mature. Small, sharp, and unexpectedly childish. He smiled at another woman the way I had long wanted him to smile at me. Ivor noticed my face change. There it is, he said quietly.
What?
The first honest pain. Do not be afraid of it. I swallowed. I thought I would be jealous of something else. Everyone thinks that, Ivor said. And then they become jealous of laughter, of a glance, of ease. I did not answer, because he was right. When the music ended, I returned to Calder. He immediately took my hand. Too quickly. Too tightly. Are you okay? He asked. Yes, I answered. And you? I just realized I can be jealous of the way a man walks. I looked at Ivor. His walk. He walks as if he has never filled out a mortgage application. I laughed, and the tension eased a little. And I was jealous of how you smiled at Celeste. Calder froze, then nodded very slowly. Good. Good. No, not good, he said. But good that you said it. We stood in the middle of the hall in masks, among strangers, soft music and warm light. And we spoke more honestly than we had in the last 5 years in our own kitchen. Perhaps that was the moment the evening almost became successful. Almost. Until a man in a dark mask approached us with a glass in his hand and the smile of someone who had long confused confidence with the right to be rude. New, he asked. Calder answered calmly. Yes. The man looked me over. Too long. Too directly. Interesting type, he said. Such a modest school lady finally deciding to sin. I felt the blood drain from my face. The word school sounded too close to my real life. Too dirty in his mouth. I opened my mouth, but Calder stepped forward before me. A very calm step.
Banker-like.
Dangerous. You have just made a mistake, he said evenly. The man smirked. Come on, I was only joking. No, Calder said. A joke should be funny to at least one reasonable person. Celeste turned toward us. So did Ivor. The man with the glass raised his hands. No need to be so serious. Calder did not even raise his voice. My wife came here not so that a stranger could turn her courage into a cheap line. The room became quieter. I looked at Calder and could not breathe. He stood before me not as a frightened husband, not as a banker, not as the father of my children, but as my man. And in that moment, something flared in me so strongly that I almost forgot where I was. The man muttered something unclear and went back to another group. Celeste came closer. Beautifully said, she said. Calder turned to me. Are we leaving? I looked at him, at his mask, at the tense line of his mouth, at the hand that still trembled slightly after his calm rebuke. Yes, I said, but not because everything is ruined. Then why? I took his arm, because I already got what I came for. He did not understand at once, but then something changed in his eyes. We said goodbye to Celeste and Ivor near the exit. Celeste hugged me lightly, almost like a friend. Do not make your first evening an exam, she said. Make it a conversation. We will try, I answered. Ivor shook Calder's hand. You held up well. Calder half smiled. I nearly died 3 times. That counts as a good result for the first time. Outside, it was freezing. New Haven glittered after the snow, and the old brick buildings seemed like calm witnesses to our small revolution. We walked to the car in silence. Calder opened the door for me. I sat down, removed the mask, and placed it on my knees. He sat behind the wheel, but did not start the engine. For several minutes, we simply sat in silence. I thought I would be more jealous, he finally said. And I thought I would feel freer. And I was only free when you defended me. He turned to me. That is not a very modern answer, but it is honest. He looked at his hands on the steering wheel. I was scared when you danced with Ivor. I saw. But I was even more scared when I realized you looked alive. I was silent. Not because I did not like it, he continued, because I realized how long it had been since I helped you be that way. My eyes stung. Calder. No, he said quietly. I need to say this. For 10 years, I thought being a good husband meant not destroying anything. He turned fully toward me. And today I realized that you can destroy nothing and still let a house die from lack of air. I closed my eyes. There it was. The real conversation. Not about the club. Not about masks. Not about other people's looks. About us. I placed my hand on his. We can still open the windows, I said. He laced his fingers through mine. Then we start now. We drove home without the radio. Only the tires whispered along the wet road, and the city lights slowly gave way to the dark trees of our neighborhood. Calder held my hand almost the whole way, sometimes too tightly. Sometimes he let go, then found my fingers again. When we entered the house, it greeted us with that same too proper order. Children's drawings on the refrigerator. Banana bread forgotten in the container. The rule sheet, which Calder took from his pocket and placed on the table. I took off my shoes in the hallway. He stood beside me and looked at me the way he had not looked at me in years. What? I asked. You did not look like a school lady, he said. I smiled. Thank you, I suppose. You looked like my wife, whom I somehow stopped noticing. My lips trembled. And you looked like the husband I once married. He stepped closer. Maribel. Yes. Tonight, no analysis? I looked at the rule sheet on the table, at our signatures, at the mask in my hand, at the man before me, confused, jealous, honest, and finally alive. Tonight, no analysis, I said. He embraced me. And for the first time in many years, it was not a movement along a familiar route. It was a return. Not perfect, not safe, but real. Part 5. The next morning, I woke up before Calder. The house was quiet, but the quiet no longer felt empty. It was like a pause after an honest conversation, when no one slammed a door and no one pretended that nothing had happened. I went downstairs to the kitchen, made coffee, and saw our sheet on the table. Rules for Sinners lay beside my black mask. In daylight, the mask looked almost funny, like a prop from a school play that had accidentally wandered into a family crisis. Calder came down 20 minutes later. His hair stuck up at the back of his head, and he looked as if he had lost a war with his own pillow. "Good morning," he said hoarsely. "Good morning." He looked at the mask, then at the sheet, then at me. "It looks less frightening in daylight." "Like most sins," I said. Calder froze, then slowly lifted one finger. I do not know whether I am allowed to laugh at that phrase before breakfast.
You are.
We do not yet have a rule against theological sarcasm. "Then we need to add one," he said and sat across from me. I poured him coffee. He took a sip and winced. "You made coffee today, as if you wanted to interrogate the beans." "We have a morning review." I was afraid of those words. "You wrote the rule about breakfast and honest conversation yourself." I was emotionally unstable and under the influence of banana bread. I smiled, then grew serious. "I felt good yesterday," I said. He nodded slowly. "So did I." "But it hurt when you smiled at Celeste." Calder did not defend himself. He did not say it was stupid. He did not remind me that I had agreed to that evening myself. He simply listened. And that was already new. "I understand," he said. "It hurt me when Ivor danced with you." He did nothing. Celeste did nothing either. I sighed. "Fair." He gave a slight smile. "Yesterday, I learned that jealousy can arrive before facts. It arrives before reason," I said. "Like children in the bathroom when you are already late." Very accurate analogy. We fell silent. Outside the window, a neighbor boy dragged a sled over an almost bare sidewalk, demonstrating faith in snow stronger than that of our entire community. "I don't want jealousy to become our new schedule," I said. "Neither do I. But I don't want to pretend it won't exist." Calder nodded. "It will exist." "Yes." "Then we will talk," he said. "Badly, awkwardly, unattractively, but we will talk." I looked at him across the table. "Yesterday, you said we could open the windows." "Yes. Open windows sometimes, let in the cold." "I know," he answered. "But closed rooms kill too." By lunchtime, the children returned. The house filled again with voices, wet gloves, stories about the hill, and hot chocolate. My mother-in-law handed me an empty container and said, "You and Calder look rested." I almost laughed in her face.
Calder coughed.
"We talked a lot." "That is good," she said. "Young couples talk too little." I looked at my husband.
He looked at me.
And we both pretended to examine Nolan's bruise with medical seriousness. After that evening, our life did not become a dangerous movie. I still taught literature.
Calder still went to the bank.
The children still argued over cereal and forgot their mittens. But inside our marriage, there was a crack in the wall. Not dangerous.
Bright.
Air came through it. Calder began sending me short messages during the day. Not practical ones like before. Not "I'll buy milk," or "Nolan has practice at 6. But living, funny, cautiously daring messages. Today a client said conservative risk, and I thought that is our family motto. I answered from the teacher's lounge, covering the screen with my hand like a teenager. "The main thing is that the risk is approved by the wife." He sent 3 dots, then wrote. The banker understood and blushed. Once, Sister Agnes caught me smiling over my phone. "Good news, Maribel?" I raised my head too quickly.
"Yes."
Calder wrote that he will buy bread. Sister Agnes looked at me suspiciously. Bread rarely causes that kind of expression. "At our house, baked goods are very emotional," I answered. She said nothing, but I am almost certain I moved up several places on her prayer list. In spring, we went to a closed evening again, not because the first time had become some magical door, but because we wanted to understand whether honesty remained when fear became smaller. This time, everything was calmer. We arrived without trembling knees, but with the same sheet of rules inside Calder's inner pocket. "You brought it again?" I asked at the entrance. "Yes." "You are impossible."
"No," he said.
"I am consistent." The evening was gentle. More conversation than tension. More laughter than jealousy. More us than anyone else. I danced with Ivor. Calder danced with Celeste. Then we returned to each other and honestly admitted that both of us had enjoyed it and both of us had hurt a little. But that pain no longer felt like a threat. It became a signal, like an alarm clock saying, "Wake up, you still care." Later, Calder led me out onto the terrace. The evening air smelled of rain and cold stone. Somewhere below, New Haven glowed. He removed his mask and looked at me for a long time. "I understood something," he said.
"What?"
"I used to think loyalty meant that no one looked to the side. And now I think loyalty means being able to look at the truth and still choose each other." I was silent. Sometimes a husband says a phrase for which it was worth passing through fear, jealousy, masks, and potatoes with character. "I choose you," he said. "Not because that is what is proper. Not because we have children. Not because we have already been together for 10 years. He squeezed my fingers. "I choose you because beside you, I am alive again." My lips trembled. "And I choose you because you did not punish me for the truth." He embraced me on the cold terrace. And for the first time in a long while, I felt not correctness, but happiness. Not loud, not perfect, but real. By summer, our life had become different, although from the outside no one would have noticed. We still went to church. I still taught at St. Bridget's School. Calder still worked at the bank. The children still considered vegetables a personal insult. Sister Agnes still said we had a wonderful family. Only now I smiled differently. Not like a woman trying to match someone else's picture, but like a woman who knows there is truth in her house. One evening, Calder and I sat in the kitchen after the children had fallen asleep. There was tea on the table. Beside it lay our old sheet, Rules for Sinners. The edges of the paper were slightly wrinkled because Calder carried it with him more often than a bank card. I took a pen and added the final line. "Do not confuse modesty with disappearance." Calder read it. Then he took the pen and wrote beneath it, "Do not confuse loyalty with prison." We looked at those 2 lines for a long time. Then he said, "Now the document is almost respectable." Almost. Maribel, the title is still legally questionable. I laughed and rested my head on his shoulder. He smelled of tea, soap, and home. But now that home was no longer a room without air. It was a place where the windows had been opened in time. I do not know whether someone from the outside would judge us. Probably yes. People judge other people's marriages easily, especially when they have never heard the silence inside those marriages. But I know something else. Masks did not save us. Closed evenings did not save us. Celeste and Ivor did not save us. We were saved by the moment when I told my husband the truth in a trembling voice, and he did not turn away. We were saved by rules that looked funny, but held us tighter than many beautiful vows. And we were saved by love that one day stopped being convenient and became alive again. If I had to leave only one phrase from this whole story, I would say this: a marriage does not die when risk enters it, but when truth can no longer enter the house. And now tell me, my dear listeners, would you dare to have such an honest conversation if you felt your marriage had become beautiful but empty? Could you accept a dangerous desire from the person you love if it was not an escape but a plea for rescue? And where, in your opinion, is the line between freedom, loyalty, and the fear of losing the one you love? Write in the comments. I am truly interested to know what you would do in Maribel's or Calder's place.